Hopefully I can stay within 3 minutes, but I would respectfully ask for a little latitude if I went a little over. Thank you. It's great to be here, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for having this on the agenda. And I actually find one thing that I agree with Mr. Failing. Not a lot has changed. Here we are almost a decade into this project, and we don't know how much it's going to cost, and we don't know what the benefit is going to be. We have no credible benefit or traffic information that has been made available to the public. And I thought it was interesting listening to Tom talk about the project in the Coachella Valley, which had actually conducted a cost-benefit analysis and actually has a funding plan before they do the EIR. What a novel concept to actually know what you're buying before you start spending millions of dollars. So 3 years ago, I spoke before the commission, and commissioners were quite concerned that there was no cost analysis available. And you all sat up and asked very good questions and talked to Mr. Failing about getting that data, and here we are 3 years later, still absent any credible information. One thing I do find that's interesting, one of the funding models that's being used for this project is based on the Alaskan Way project at $1.13 billion per mile, and we're told that that's the same funding model that's being used for the Sepulveda Pass project and the 710. But interestingly, the Sepulveda Pass project using the same funding model is $10 billion, but the 710 is actually longer, but the same gauge is half that. So how can we be using the same funding model but coming up with half the cost? So I would say if MTA is the lead agency, if they can't do basic math, we should find another lead agency for this project. We're then told that all of a sudden one tunnel might disappear in order to meet the $5 billion price tag. Well, if all of the basis for this project has been for a decade on 2 tunnels, if we suddenly cut it to 1, don't we lose the necessity for the project? I would argue yes. So again, I would say it's very crystal clear at a time when the taxpayer limited dollars are being stretched as much as we can, that we don't spend the $780 million of Measure R money on a project that we already know doesn't pencil out. One of the MTA commissioners has repeatedly asked for a cost-benefit analysis. And if you go back to 2006, the region was promised that we would not move to an EIR until a cost-benefit analysis was conducted. Every effort to get one put on the table has been voted down again by the lead agency. The lead agency question is also very interesting because the same MTA commissioner has asked to have county council say who's actually in charge, who's going to make the decision, and guess what? The document that was issued by county council is being kept secret. County council told the board members, do not release the document to the public. They tried illegally to go into closed session to talk about a memo, and as all of you know, you can only go into closed session to talk about property acquisition, litigation, or personnel. A memo on who's in charge doesn't fall into any of those 3 categories. When audience members shouted them down not to go into closed session illegally, they said, well, we'll just keep the memo secret. So again, if you have an agency that can't answer the question, who's in charge, how can you trust them with a $10 billion project? Again, I go back to P3. It's interesting that the slide said freeway. Freeways are free. P3s have tolls. This is a toll road. Again, at very least, it should be called what it is, a tollway. And so if you have an agency making a presentation before this board, calling it a freeway, when it is in fact a tollway, that should send a red light, very, very blinking. Mr. Kempton, when he was the director of Caltrans, again, reiterated to the region that before this project moved forward, a cost-benefit analysis would be done. And he tasked MTA with Task Order 5. Interestingly, within 2 months of him leaving that post, Task Order 5 was red penciled out. Red penciled out. So here we are, 3 years later. We don't know the cost. We don't know the impact on arterial streets. Oh, by the way, a toll will create a 35% diversion rate. Traffic on the arterial streets will increase not decrease. No one has put that information on the table. Mr. Fromer asked a very good question, will there be public meetings? Well, at those public meetings that have been going on, no credible information on the benefit to air quality, to traffic, or cost are being given out to the affected communities. Meanwhile, as the cities learn more about this project, you're seeing city after city after city take an opposed position. One of the speakers that will follow me will present, I think, over 1,600 signatures on a petition that have been gathered just in the past weeks to oppose this project. I've been assured by Caltrans and the governor's office that this project won't move forward without an agency other than MTA holding people responsible and asking tough questions. What I'm asking you today is to ask those tough questions. How is it that you can use a funding model that's pretty simple but come up with half the price? I think MTA Commissioner Najarian is correct. I'm almost there. Is correct in his assumption that a P3 only works if the price is under $6 billion. So every effort is being done to make sure that the cost estimates are under $6 billion, when in fact this project is going to be well over $10 billion. You owe it to the taxpayer, you owe it to the residents, you owe it to all of us to ask the tough questions, and I urge you to do that. I urge you to put a fork in F7 alternative to the 710. Thank you.
Very good.
Good evening. I'm Donald Voss. I'm a council member from La Piñata Flintridge. As you know from your package, the State Route 710 project is currently in a study stage to determine whether there is actual need to address mobility at the northern terminus of the 710 freeway, and if so, by what economical means. And these are identified as the alternatives in your package, as Mr. Hilling described them. One of these alternatives is a 4.5-mile freeway tunnel currently projected to cost $5.4 billion. Today, I don't want to talk about the fact that the cities and communities of Sierra Madre, La Crescenta, South Pasadena, La Piñata Flintridge, Glendale, and Los Angeles are all on record formally opposing the freeway tunnel. And I don't want to talk about the devastating and potentially life-threatening effects the proposed tunnel would bring to families who live in proximity to existing freeways in the many communities that propose the tunnel. Instead, I'd like to talk about what has so far been an elusive missing ingredient in evaluating each of the mobility alternatives, and that is a credible cost-benefit analysis and a foundational methodology. Despite the fact that tens of millions of dollars have already been spent evaluating the mobility alternatives, and despite the fact that LA County Metro has earmarked $780 million for this project that isn't even yet defined, there is a lack of information to make a determination that any of the alternative projects would make financial sense. A methodology to quantify the benefit of any of the alternatives and to measure that quantified benefit against the relevant cost has not been made available, especially at this time in which actual costs of California mega projects in relation to budgets are coming under increased scrutiny, such as the new eastern span of the Bay Bridge. It is crucially important to understand a realistic cost estimate for each of these 710 project alternatives and the associated cost-benefit relationships. This is particularly true for the freeway tunnel alternative because, as currently projected, it would cost twice as much as all the other alternatives combined. I respectfully ask the commissioners to be watchful of all developments on this project, especially those related to projected costs and missing cost-benefit analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If we have some time before we have to leave the building, but we're going to go back. We'll do public comments.
One very quick question about Caltrans.
Yeah.
What do we, aren't we not supposed to do a cost-benefit analysis on large projects before we start? Is there some requirement?
There's a requirement during the process to do various financial analysis on the projects.
Is that done in advance of the EIR, in the EIR? Or
It'll be part of the project report.
Part of the project report, which is part of the EIR?
No. It's adjacent to the EIR. We can fold it into the EIR.
It comes before, right? Okay. So when do you expect that to be out?
It doesn't come before, it's at the same time. They're parallel paths.
So they'll be released together?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and can I make one thing clear is that Caltrans is CEQA and NEPA lead on the project, and we have made that clear at Metro
You are the
Police.
lead agency?
Yes.
For both?
Yes.
All right, we have,
I just would also note that our board has insisted on a cost-benefit analysis, which is part of this program.
Yeah, where is it?